The U.S. Supreme Court delivered a major decision today, one that will limit federal judges' power to block the president's agenda nationwide. The decision, which resulted from a case related to an executive order on birthright citizenship, rules that individual judges cannot grant nationwide injunctions to block any policies coming from the White House. The court ruled 6-3 along partisan lines.
In her opinion, Justice Amy Coney Barrett wrote, "No one disputes that the executive has a duty to follow the law, but the judiciary does not have unbridled authority to enforce this obligation. In fact, sometimes the law prohibits the judiciary from doing so." The justices did not rule on the merits of the Trump administration's restrictions on birthright citizenship, but the president welcomed the ruling during a press briefing today.
Thanks to this decision, we can now properly file to proceed with these numerous policies and those that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis, including birthright citizenship, ending sanctuary city funding, suspending refugee resettlement, freezing unnecessary funding, stopping federal taxpayers from paying for transgender surgeries, and...
Hello there, villagers. Welcome back to another video here in Stacy's of Random POV. And I had to bring myself to the camera this time because I wanted to make sure that you guys see my face when I say what I'm about to say. And today we are discussing the discussion surrounding the three branches of government when it comes to the birthright citizenship. So if you guys were not aware, or if you guys forgot, in January, the executive branch, which is the office of the president, he came out and said that he was ending birthright citizenship in the United States. In response to that, 22 states within the United States sued Donald Trump. I don't know if that's the judicial or the legislature. I don't know. I believe it might be the judicial, right? They went ahead and sued him and said, no, we are not going to go by what you said because it is part of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. So Trump went to the Supreme Court. Again, I don't know if it's the legislation or the judicial part, right? Because maybe I get confused, but I do know that the executive branch is the president's office. So fast forward now, the Supreme Court made a ruling and made a ruling saying that the 22 states that sued President Trump can uphold the 14th Amendment until they make their decision about birthright citizenship. So they're saying you guys are not allowed to tell the executive branch what to do when it comes to their decisions because you guys are not us, basically. So that's what I took from it. And they're saying, but those 22 states that sued the decision, that fought against that decision, you guys can uphold the 14th Amendment until we make a decision on what exactly we are going to do about the executive order given by the president. So basically, the 22 states, I will post you the video right after I'm done talking here regarding which 22 states sued Trump back in January to make sure that they don't have to uphold these ridiculous orders. Well, I'm glad to say I'm in New York. Oh my God, thank goodness. But however, the other states that were not part of that injunction, they're gonna have to figure it out. So basically, if you have a visa, if you are illegal, your children born in those states that are not inside the states, they are basically going to be illegal as well. They will not be U.S. citizens, and you will not have protection for anything. Also, you will not have benefits. You cannot get benefits. No SNAP benefits, no Medicaid, none of that. But if you are in the 22 states that did sue Trump, you are going to be okay. That is my complete understanding of this ruling until the Supreme Court makes a decision whether or not the entire 50 states are going to, if in fact the whole 50 states are going to go by this decision made by the president. But as always, as you guys know, I love to bring you guys what other people had to say about this matter. So that's exactly what I did. And let me know what you guys think about this ruling by the Supreme Court. Again, I don't know which one is the judicial, the legislation. I know that the office of the president is the executive order. So if you guys know the difference, let me know in the comments below. I mean, come on, this is a village and it takes a village. So once you subscribe, you automatically become a member of this village. I really appreciate you guys for being here, for watching this video. And don't forget, if you got a comment on what a person on the video has said, just put a timestamp on it and I got you. I'll be in the comments with you. And I'll see you guys on my next video. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Do have to come back and say that the other states that are outside of those 22 states, you have 20 days in order for it to get to be in effect. The fact that you are not going to be a U.S. citizen. So in 20 days, if you have a visa or you're here illegally, and that's any type of visa, regardless of what it is, this is only applying for the people that are illegal or with a visa. So I say this to say that you have 20 days, and that is when this ruling will go in effect. But again, for the 22 states that sued Trump, you are free. They are free to move on business as usual. Anyone being born in those 22 states, you will be granted the citizenship of your child being born in U.S. soil, basically. But yeah, that's all I wanted to add.
Okay, so hidden in one of today's Supreme Court decisions is a provision that could irreversibly change the course of American history, and nobody's talking about it. So let me put my law degree to good use and break it down for you. Hidden in the court's decision on Trump's birthright citizenship executive order is the following line, where the majority says, "No one disputes that the executive has a duty to follow the law, but the judiciary does not have unbridled authority to enforce this obligation. In fact, sometimes the law forbids the judiciary from doing so." So in layman's terms, what the court is saying here is that while the president should, in theory, follow the law and respect the Constitution, if he doesn't do that, the courts cannot hold him accountable. The courts have historically been the referee on executive power, and they call a foul when the president crosses the line. But this Supreme Court is saying that that's not their role anymore. So if we follow the logic of this precedent, the Constitution is dead letter law to the president if he decides he'd rather not follow it. This was the cherry on top of the court this term laying the groundwork of a de facto presidential dictatorship, where the president is immune from the law, cannot be held accountable by the courts, and now at this point, the Constitution is more of a guiding principle than an actual binding document. The mainstream media and legal scholars are playing this down because this is so counter to everything we've ever been taught about the American government and the principles of law, it's difficult to wrap your mind around. There's a reason the court waited to release this as one of their last decisions, and it's because they know that it's controversial to give the president carte blanche to do whatever he wants and to disempower any other court from stopping him. Democracy is fragile, more fragile in this country than a lot of us realize, and I hope it's not too late before everybody starts paying attention and calling out these abuses of power.
Based on what the Supreme Court did today, if anybody is having any conversations around birthright citizenship or citizenship as a whole, if you do not know who this man is, you should be ashamed of yourself. Because it's as a result of Dred Scott that birthright citizenship can exist. Dred Scott was enslaved by a U.S. Army surgeon by the name of Dr. John Emerson. Emerson took Mr. Scott to an area which would be considered between Illinois and Wisconsin, which at the time, slavery was illegal. When Emerson died, Dred Scott tried to buy his and his wife's freedom from Emerson's widow, to which she refused. And this man, in the 1800s, sued her This black man's case went to the Supreme Court in the 1800s. And one of the most infamous quotes that sets the precedence for how we are still treated in this country till this day as black Americans was stated by Chief Justice Robert B. Taney, that black people have no rights that a white man is bound to respect. The Dred Scott ruling of 1857 said that black people were not citizens and that we were not even allowed to sue in federal court, that Congress had no power to ban slavery, which invalidated the Missouri Compromise, and that Mr. Dred Scott had no legal standing, although he was in a state where enslavement was illegal. Dred Scott passed 1 year later, never to have seen the abolishment of slavery in the 13th Amendment, nor the rise of birthright citizenship with the 14th Amendment. So let him be a reminder that citizenship has always been racialized and contested.
The executive order ending birthright citizenship, the constitutional ruling that anyone born in the United States is a citizen, that is ending in about 20 states about 30 days from now. Well, this ruling from the U.S. Supreme Court doesn't talk about the constitutionality of birthright citizenship. Instead, it addresses whether a lower court judge can essentially set nationwide policy, and the conclusion is it can't. As a result, President Trump's executive order ending birthright citizenship can move forward in about 20 states, and that can take place in about 30 days, so somewhere around July 27th. The tri-state area still has ongoing litigation to block this, and that stays in effect. So birthright citizenship in New York, Connecticut, and New Jersey will not be impacted for now. There are going to be a lot of debates about this. It was a 6-3 majority ruling, with Justice Amy Coney Barrett writing in the majority, and a couple of strongly worded dissenting opinions, including Justice Sotomayor and Justice Jackson, who said that this is a travesty of law. So a lot of debate will still move forward, but for now, the executive order ending birthright citizenship, the constitutional ruling that anyone born in the United States is a citizen, that is ending in about 20 states about 30 days from now, unless other states file lawsuits to change that.
Birthright citizenship. Bad news for Donald Trump. Good news for those Americans that were born in the United States, where Trump is trying to take away their U.S. citizenship. In the Supreme Court decision that was released yesterday, 6-3 on Trump versus Casa, the Supreme Court basically said that judges could not do blanket national injunctions for presidential actions. But they did say that if there were class action lawsuits, they could be done nationally to where they could stop the president's policies across the entire United States. So the group in Maryland that has brought the lawsuit, Casa versus Trump, has now refiled their lawsuit against Trump and turned it into a class action lawsuit. That is one avenue that is permissible. They have done that. That has now been refiled, and it's my understanding from what I'm reading from the news media that that has been refiled in Maryland, and in turn they're asking the judge to again block it nationally, which under a class action lawsuit they can do. So they've just had to change which street, which avenue they're going down, but they're still doing it. So again, do not give up hope. Whatever you do, you don't give up hope. The game is never over till it's over, and it's not. So there you have it. There's the latest on that. Love to hear from my Democrats, my MAGAs, my crazies, my cuckoos, my burned out light bulbs. Anybody in the country that's a birthright citizen or an anchor baby, as Trump would call it. And Marco Rubio, maybe you that fit this? Yeah, there you have it. Love to hear from all the hypocrites too. There are plenty of them out there.
The 14th Amendment says if you're born in the United States, you're a U.S. citizen, but President Trump doesn't think so. Here's the breakdown. President Trump signed an executive order when he took office again to end birthright citizenship. Birthright citizenship means if you are born in this country, possibly to parents who are in the country illegally, you are still considered a U.S. citizen. So what happened today? The U.S. Supreme Court ruled 6-3, saying some federal judges are overstepping their powers and should not be able to issue a nationwide block. President Trump and Attorney General Pam Bondi held a press conference immediately after that ruling, basically celebrating it as a big win. But the Supreme Court did not rule on the merits of it. Basically, they did not say if Trump's executive order is constitutional or not. Attorney General Pam Bondi told the media that she thinks the Supreme Court will rule on if it's legal or not later this fall.
Birthright citizenship was meant for the babies of slaves. Oh, okay, we're good then, right? We can say. No. Was the black that birthed you a slave? And I don't mean that new age slavery crap you're talking about with us only paying you pennies and minimum wage and not being able to afford things. Of course my mother wasn't a slave. Slavery supposedly ended a long time ago, right? See, so you're not a slave. Even you admit it. So that means we can deport you up out of this country too. That's why we've been working on deporting people to countries that they weren't born in. You're going to end up back in Africa. But I'm not from Africa. I've never been to Africa before in my entire life. Oh, I can't hear you over that plane that's ready to fly to Africa. Don't worry, once you land on the continent, you'll just become African again. As soon as your feet touch Africa, all of your instincts will come back and you'll build spears and start hunting animals. It's all starting to come together. The puzzle pieces are there. I mean, you already said that demon, Stephen Miller, the chair, would want a country that doesn't resemble anybody other than white people. See, you're getting it. Now you blacks know that you're going back too. Can you start with the black MAGAs first? I really want to see how they'll react. Deal. I've been waiting to get them up out of here anyways.
The Supreme Court just handed Donald Trump a major win by limiting judges' ability to block his birthright citizenship order nationwide. The Supreme Court just made a big decision that helps Trump and makes it harder for courts to stop his horrific policies. In a 6-3 vote along ideological lines, the court said judges cannot issue orders that block a president's action for the entire country. Instead, they can only protect the specific people or groups who filed the lawsuit. The case was about Trump's 2025 executive order that tried to limit birthright citizenship for children of undocumented immigrants. Lower courts had stopped the order from affecting anyone in the United States, but the Supreme Court said those rulings were too broad. Now Trump's policy could possibly be enforced against most people while legal challenges continue, though it is still unclear. The court did not say whether Trump's order limiting birthright citizenship was legal or constitutional. It only ruled on how much power judges have to stop presidential actions. The decision means future challenges to the Trump administration's policies will be tougher because lawsuits may only protect the people who file them, not everyone in the country. The 3 liberal judges dissented, arguing this could let presidents ignore people's rights unless they each sue individually, something that many cannot even afford to do. For now, the ruling gives presidents more power to enforce controversial policies while courts decide their legality. It also means opponents may need to file many separate lawsuits to protect different groups of people. The case now goes back to the lower courts with new limits on how they can block federal policies.
Well, they did it. The Supreme Court just ruled not on the constitutional basis of the executive order against birthright citizenship, but instead on the ability of federal courts to issue injunctions to block the effects of this executive order, which means that the executive order against birthright citizenship can go into effect in different parts of the country. So again, this ruling was not addressing the major issue and question as to whether or not this executive order is constitutional or not. This ruling limits the power of federal judges to block the impacts of this executive order. And this effectively means that Trump and his administration are now able to define what birthright citizenship looks like and means through their executive orders and through executive orders coming down the line. This is one of the most impactful rulings we've seen this court issue in a 6-3 vote. It's also one of the most concerning because some of us know the history of birthright citizenship and what that means. But also, when you allow people to define and redefine what birthright citizenship looks like based on their own agenda, not constitutionally, but based on how they feel and what they deem correct according to their plans in Project 2025, this is dangerous. This is extremely dangerous. So again, just for clarity, they did not rule on whether or not this executive order was constitutional or not. They ruled to limit the power of federal judges to block the impacts of this order, which means that in certain parts of the country, this order will go into effect.
And boom, just like that, the Supreme Court has clipped every judge in America who tried to stop Trump's birthright citizenship ban. Now, they didn't rule on the ban itself. They simply said, lower courts, stand down. This pattern of the court, especially under this current makeup, has leaned dangerously toward executive deference, particularly when it involves Trump. It's no longer just about rulings. It's about the posture of the court, and the posture matters. It signals to lower courts, to Congress, to the people, and most dangerously, to the would-be authoritarian. Every historical slide into fascism, oligarchy, or dictatorship was aided by enablers in robes, uniforms, or suits. Kings don't crown themselves. They're elevated by elites who see something to gain or something to protect. My message to voters is this. Before cheering for a charisma or a party label, ask yourself, ask your local, state, national candidates, what does the Constitution mean to you beyond a soundbite? Do you see it as a living promise or a fixed relic? Do you believe that the rule of law applies to everyone, including a former president? Would you obey the Constitution, even when party or allies ask you not to? Now, there are no guarantees that a politician will be honest. Liar's gonna lie. But we must ask questions differently from all people who are running for any position of power and authority in government. Democracy isn't sustained by institutions alone. It's upheld by the character of the people inside them. So know this, a king can't kill a country alone. It takes robes who bow in silence and gavels that echo permission. It takes lawmakers who forget their oath and citizens who forget their power. So let's remember our power and hold their feet to the fire.
Let me make one thing real clear. This ain't about injunctions. This is about erasing the 14th Amendment with a smile. We thought the courts were supposed to be the last line of defense, the place where liberty stands tall even when presidents go rogue. But on Friday, in a 6-3 decision straight down party lines, the Supreme Court told us, nah, we good. They let Trump sneak his foot in the door to cancel birthright citizenship. And they dressed it up in legal jargon about equity and injunctions. Oh, but don't get distracted. The real target was always your rights, especially if you was born with brown skin, immigrant parents, or ancestors who came here in chains rather than visas. For a second, it looked like the lower courts might hold the line, right? 3 federal judges had already slapped Trump's executive orders down with nationwide injunctions, telling him loud and clear, you can't just rewrite the Constitution because you feel like it. Immigrant groups were celebrating. 22 states stood up in court. Even the appellate courts said, let this play out. Then SCOTUS slid in like a repo man in the night. Instead of ruling on whether Trump's executive order was flat out unconstitutional, which it was, they sidestepped it and went for the technical foul. Universal injunctions go too far. God damn it. Basically, the court said that judges can't stop Trump's policies for everyone. Only the people who specifically sued. So now we're playing legal whack-a-mole across 50 states while Trump rushes to implement a policy that directly contradicts 150 years of law. So what's at stake, right? Everything. Let me break this down plain and simple. Trump's executive order says, if your parents weren't here legally, or maybe they were here legally, but temporarily, you don't deserve citizenship. Are you serious? The 14th Amendment that was passed after the Civil War to make sure that Black folks were considered full human beings says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens. It don't say, except for immigrants. It don't say, only if your parents had papers. It says, all persons. A phrase so fucking inclusive, it slapped the face of Dred Scott and every slave master of the fucking Confederacy. So what Trump is really doing here is rewriting Reconstruction. The very laws meant to undo slavery. And the Supreme Court just handed him the pen. You thought Isengard was bad? You thought Voldemort was a problem? Justice Amy Coney Barrett, Trump's handpicked avatar, penned this majority opinion like it was a legal lullaby, with principles of equity, she says, while politely gutting the power of federal courts to stop executive tyranny. And while they didn't officially cancel birthright citizenship yet, make no mistake, they laid the legal groundwork to allow Trump to do it himself. In the dissent, Justice Sonia Sotomayor, she tried to hold the line, calling out how this decision disregards the long history of protection for non-parties. But her voice is now a lonely alarm in a house full of arsonists. This ain't about immigration. This is about control. It's about telling people of color, especially Black, brown, or immigrant babies, that their existence is conditional. That if you ain't got the generational wealth, land deeds, or ancestors off the Mayflower, you're permanently under review. Today is birthright citizenship. Tomorrow is voting rights. Affirmative action, gone. Housing, gone. Education, you got it, gone. When does it stop? In the MAGA cult, oh, they're going to keep smiling in your face, talking about this is what we voted for. This is what the founders wanted. Don't forget, y'all, the founders owned slaves. They're not playing. Trump told you on day one what he was coming for. And this court just gave him the green light to drive through your rights like a bulldozer in a graveyard. So don't wait on the Constitution to bleed before you speak up. Because if birthright citizenship can be reviewed, so can your freedom.